Welcome to the Consummate Athlete podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, I'm excited to be here today. My t-shirt on the YouTube video is the Collingwood Collective t-shirt. This is our local youth team, and they racing. They did great this year. So this is today's t-shirt.
I like that you're trying to lure people into watching us on YouTube.
I was like, it's just us sitting here talking. It's not like we're dancing or anything. I guess we could go there, but...
I did just tell you we really should learn a dance.
I like dancing. I find it very awkward, but it's something I've always been drawn to. But, we talked about it in I think that was a previous episode now, our Q&A over the holidays around goal setting. And so we were talking about fit before grit. And it's weird because I think I actually really like dancing and am fairly persistent. Like, it's something like we do it all the time. But over my life, we have taken
we've gone to
dance.
Many
it wasn't like one time and we quit. I've gone to Colombia for a while, and we did salsa a bunch.
I can't even talk to you right now.
Well, I didn't say what's the stereotypical place to go. Anyhow,
it's literally the most stereotypical white male hitting 40 thing that you could possibly have said that you did.
I was 20 when I went. That's different. Finding yourself.
Argentina to tango might be like.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway.
Anyhow, we have continued to take dance lessons, but still are not very good at all.
No, we're terrible. But that's because we take so long between dance lessons. We just have not found the place to take them, I think, is the problem.
We did try. It's a long story. I can't tell you it now, but we tried here in town and it went comically poorly, and it wasn't our fault at all.
That went poorly.
I'm not big on external attribution, but that was not on us. So there you go. Keep taking dance classes. We're not dancing, but I'm wearing a t-shirt. Maybe no shirt for next time.
Oh boy.
We have a Q&A. We're going to do some rapid fire questions today.
I'm sorry, you just went really deep into the Frasier archives of the episode we just watched where he decides to go full on sexy because he's been banished to the night the night
It's
shift.
true. Yeah.
And I'm not wearing any pants.
Let's take off our clothes. Yeah, okay.
Okay, anyway, back to serious questions. We do have a fun rapid fire today, so I feel like we're just getting in the fun rapid fire vibe. But before we get into that, quick word from our sponsor, AG1. We are now in the new year. This is still something that is on my daily habits. We talked about micro daily habits and things that are good for your health and longevity. And I would say taking AG1 every day, mixing it into my water first thing in the morning, definitely one of my foundational habits, which makes sense because it is a foundational nutritional supplement.
It's solid, and it's NSF certified. We like that. So it's, if we're competing in sport, this is going to be something that's important just to try and make sure we're taking things that have this third-party certification or validation.
And it's certified for sport, to be clear. So
right.
There's a difference between, this is I know no other AG1 ad talks about this, but this is the hill that I'm willing to die on here. I do a lot of writing for USADA's youth arm, actually. So this is something I'm very, very familiar with at this point. But certified for sport means it has been tested for sport, not just for what's in it.
Sure.
So you know that it doesn't have anything that it doesn't have on the label, and it has everything that it says on the label. So it goes both ways. Anyway, it has all of your probiotics, prebiotics, adaptogens, greens, vitamins, minerals, all the good stuff in one pack. The travel pack's super convenient for when you are on the go. The vitamin D drops, you get a free supply of vitamin D with your first order. Those are fantastic, especially during cold and flu season. Just honestly, if you haven't tried it yet, what are you waiting for? Give it a month, see what it does to your daily routine. You can take ownership of your health, get your 5 free travel packs, your immune supporting vitamin D, plus obviously your actual athletic greens or AG1 over at drinkag1.com/MollyH. Again, drinkag1.com/MollyH to take ownership over your health. And also, P.S., highly recommend using a frother to stir it up. Tastes fantastic. All right. Rapid fire time.
We'll see how I do.
You ready? Okay. I'm going to hit you with the first one. Mountain bike choices. Do we go full suspension or hardtail in the year of our Lord, 2024?
What does that even mean?
I don't know. Okay. I just feel like we're in the future. I don't know.
Okay. We usually refer to 1984 as God's year.
Because you were born?
Yeah. It's also the year the world was supposed to fall apart, I guess.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of which, happy 40th birthday, honey.
Is it my birthday today?
Well, not today, but this is the first time I'm getting to say it on the podcast. It's actually not the first episode after your birthday. That was last week's with Stacey Sims, but I forgot to say it then. So happy 40th birthday.
So further not related to hardtails and dual suspension, but I have a friend who on the internet, and I know him in person as well. And we actually have the same bike, which is fun too. But he just turned 40. And so he posted this thing of like the last deadlift of before I turned 40. And I was like, are you okay? This sounds a lot like a last run.
Yeah, jeez.
And like he deadlifts a lot. So I was like, this is where your spine pops out the back.
Okay, on last run stories, I just have to. My dad actually turned 65 this year.
Okay.
And his last run, he's a landscaper, and he usually has off in the winter because obviously not a lot of landscaping going on. And he was out with the leaf blower for his last run of 2023.
Yeah, and at 65, like this is, is this the last day at work potentially? And then he turtled himself.
Yeah, it was one of the backpack leaf blowers, and tripped on a rock, went backwards, like threw out his shoulder,
landed on the backpack.
Yeah,
of the
landed
leaf
on the
blower.
backpack,
Yeah.
turtled himself. But you know what? He's up. He was at the gym the next day. Dave Herford, Hard Man Award.
Okay, so that was 4 digressions from dual suspension hardtail.
I think being 40 years old matters for this question because you have seen it all. Like you were on the janky first full suspension bikes that were just comical. The ones with like the big springs.
Yeah, we had Y frames, were fun. Yeah. Started on a CCM rigid bike.
And 26-inch wheels. I mean, this question doesn't even talk about tires. Wheel size.
Tires or wheels or like it all factors in. So I would say if this is always like this flow chart, right? You could almost make a flow chart. Maybe this is something Molly can work on. You like a good...
No, Molly is not good at infographics.
Oh, okay. You don't like infographics.
I love them. I'm not a patient person.
Put the little white man and he's like got a construction hat
on.
So if money's not an obstacle, 100% dual suspension. I don't think there's like really a great reason for a hardtail, but there's a few caveats. Let's say you're doing Leadville, which is sort of where this question is coming from. I'm trying to answer this generally, but this is sort of where it's coming from. I think you would see like a lot of the pros, I think are going for like the lightest, like I know Alexi and who won? Keegan. I think they were both on hardtails, like very light, but keep in mind that they're pushing or just under 6 hours now. So their race is relatively shorter than the rest of us. If we're trying to get like under the 12-hour thing, like the race is twice as long, and our bodies, to your point, are probably in the 40s, 50s for a lot of the folks, right? So
suspension is going to give you a bit more
comfort, control. Like when you're climbing, there's control. When you're descending, there's more control. Like you might not get flipped over your handlebars, right? Like if you're just going for lightness, then you risk flatting, you get fatigue, you get kicked off your bike. You might not be able to climb something that a dual suspension might grab the traction on.
Right.
So again, like I think almost always dual suspension. Now that gets into like, do you get something like the Trek Super Caliber where it's sort of like this like F1 style, shorter travel dual suspension? That's what I would race in Leadville and what I would race in cross country Olympic. But if you're someone who really wants to ride your bike and have fun, then I would go more like a Trek Fuel or something like that. That's more like a cross country.
But whatever it is, make it a Trek.
Yeah, it's not an ad. I didn't wear my Trek shirt, but I probably should have. So I think to keep it long, I would probably get a dual suspension just because it's going to be more fun. Now, the only caveat is, or not the only, a couple other here would be like if you don't have a lot of money and your bike's going to be a janky, heavy bike, then you need to go probably hardtail just to get decent components and like light enough. And then you're going to be into just trying to like maximize maybe with tires, and now with dropper posts and inserts, you can get a little bit more comfort out of the front shock and the tires. But yeah, that's...
What is your, I guess, like minimum viable group set, would you say?
I don't know. I mean, 3 down, whatever 3 down is.
Okay, actually, I think that's actually a really good, like, because I can't remember the names of them for like Shimano or Zero, but I think that's a really good, go like, what's the top one, and then go down to.
Yeah, 2 or
like,
3 down is probably the way to go.
I don't think very few people need the highest of the high end, but definitely having demoed a lot of bikes over the years.
Well, and you mean demo. I mean demo. And when you like destroy bikes.
Yeah, you demolish.
It's a lot nicer when the replacement cost is not $1,000.
But I mean, I've tested bikes that had, like much lower end components and much higher end components. And I can say like there's a good middle ground, like definitely the middle, but holy crap. Like when you get the really good stuff, like suddenly you realize what you've been missing.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's trickle down over time, right? So I always just think about that. Like 2 years ago, that three down was probably the top of the line. So it's probably fine for most of us. And we're looking for, the replacement cost is a consideration when we're thinking about getting back on trail and making this, not so unaffordable. But then there is also like a resilience sometimes there too. Like some of them are built, I don't know that you could say that they're necessarily are always stronger than the highest end, but that's the way I would go with it. But that's a secondary question.
Yeah.
The only other thing is like I do have a hardtail that's more for coaching and like fall riding. So if you are someone who just like destroys bikes and rides in like mud and rain all the time, sometimes the hardtails are fun for that. And this bike I have is like a play hardtail, so it's pretty like slack head tube and fork, big fork on the front, big tires. I have inserts in that. So it's a really fun bike. It's not as fun as a dual suspension for like pounding through things and going super fast, but it goes really fast downhill. And again, the value on that bike is quite good. And it's not super light, but it's a lot lighter than the equivalent, dual suspension would be at that money. So
yeah. And the last budget note is dual suspensions definitely do take more by way of maintenance. Like it
for sure, you're gonna have to do bushings and shock rebuilds and all of this. Yep.
So I think when you are looking at the budget, if you are between sort of like a good hardtail or like a medium dual suspension, think about not just the initial cost outlay, but also just increased maintenance cost on dual suspension, especially if you are really hard on bikes.
I guess the only other note there, which sort of plays into the dual suspension and the cost, is the aluminum now. If you look at especially the big brands like Trek and Specialized and so forth, have really put a lot of time into aluminum, and you can actually get pretty light aluminum bikes now.
I love an aluminum bike.
So that's another consideration too, that you could get, if that gets you, maybe the weight and the components, and there's sort of this, figuring out the right fit there. But I always think that, there's the race you're doing, but then there's also like, what is the riding you intend to do on this bicycle the rest of the year? And can you get sort of like a fit in that position? But yeah, dual suspension is definitely good.
Yeah.
It's gotten so good. Like it's just now we talked about the Trek Y frame, right? Where it's like bouncing, and this was like whatever year that was. I was in elementary school. So it would be like, I don't know, year 2000, 99, 2000. Just nothing. It was so bouncy, and there was no lockouts and anything. But now everything locks out completely, and they're light, and I don't know. They're pretty magical.
There you go. Okay. Do you want to talk heart rate stuff?
Sure. We have a post that's one of our most popular posts is around. So you have heart rate fails, you're getting errors. You don't want that. As someone who looks at a lot of files, it's really annoying when like there's every day is like this spike in heart rate because your heart rate strap's reading wrong. A lot of times it's at the front of the workout. So we have a post that's sort of, clean it, put the battery in backwards to try and reset it, replace the battery, make sure that the heart rate unit is oriented upright. So if it says Wahoo on it or something, it's not true for every heart rate strap that this is the case, but generally some of them are sensitive to like left, right. So the logo should be proper.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I don't even care which one. Like some of it matters, some of it don't, but just like align your logo. This is a good general practice. Like your logo should be aligned. And then if it's just not working and you've had it for a while, so if it's not working and you haven't had it for a while, then send it back and get the warranty. Most of the companies are very good and will probably just ship you a new one to get you to be quiet. If you've had it for like years, you might just need to get a new one, in which case there's some cheap ones. And I hate to say this, but like on Amazon that like honestly have been lasting longer than some of these like name brand ones. And do the Bluetooth and Ant Plus, so you can use it on your phone or on your bike computer. We'll put the link in the show note for the one
that you've had for a while now.
Yeah. So there you go.
Perfect. Next question was how to use heart rate and RPE, sort of, I guess, combining them. Like, how do you figure out like if your heart rate's really high but your RPE doesn't feel super high, or vice versa?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. There's almost a scale if you think about this, the year, right? Where like when you start early in the year, probably feeling is the main thing. You're getting back to training, heart rate might be high, power might be low. So you almost start just focused on feeling. Like, are you getting out, have some fun, move, finish the like duration or whatever is sort of dictating that workout, but you almost start with feeling. Then once you get into like, 2 and 3 months in, probably heart rate's important because you're doing more endurance and tempo. You're going to limit it with the endurance. Heart rate's normalized a bit more. At that point, you're getting fitter. So, heart rate isn't instantly going really high. I would keep feeling in there because it might be cold out and your heart rate might be low, or you might be indoors and your heart rate might be high because of the demands of the heat. So still I would limit it with heart rate, but also, triangulate. It's not triangulating, but sort of triangulating with heart rate and maybe a bit of power if you have it. And then probably as you start getting closer to race, you're thinking more about a pace or a power or a time up a hill, which is going to still tie in like RPE because you still are feeling and pacing and trying to go as hard as you can, hard RPE, but not so hard that you fade, right? And you're trying to learn about this. And this is where these other two metrics, heart rate and power, can really triangulate off of those. Did that answer the question around RPE?
I think so. Perfect. Rapid fire.
I think you always want to use them all. People don't like the feeling one. Either people don't like feeling or they like get confused about numbers. The numbers don't matter so much. It's just like, is this supposed to be an endurance workout, which is like low, 3, 4 out of 10? And then, or was it supposed to be moderate, 5 to 7? Or was it supposed to be very hard, 8 to maybe 10? You don't see a lot of 10s usually in the workout, or in workouts, I should say.
I admit, I struggle with moderate. Like, I find moderate very difficult. I think with the exception of during races, but I find like in workouts, it's very hard for me to tell where like easy ends and moderate begins and moderate ends and hard begins.
They blur, right? And I think so. Like moderate versus hard to me is moderate. You are confident of finishing whatever you're doing.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So slow down if you're like, oh, I don't know, and I'm gonna quit. Like slow down, right? And then I think the breathing is also the other thing. At moderate, the breathing's not getting haggard and like really like ragged. When you're endurance, there shouldn't really be like, this is the talk test, right? So if we start seeing that deepening or your focus is narrowing, that would be probably getting into moderate. But you're right. This is the tricky thing for a lot of people. And really this question of like, I'm out there and my heart rate's really high because I'm newer to cycling. I think for a lot of newer cyclists, it doesn't matter that much. Like I think just try and, not be maxed out and finish whatever you were supposed to do that day.
Perfect. Choosing the right weight for combination exercises.
Okay.
So I guess this is where you're doing like squat and then press up
and this usually comes from like you're in like a buns and guns class at the local gym or something.
I would go to that. Why don't we have those around here?
We do. They're at the Y. Yeah, I think they might actually call it buns and guns.
No.
It's inappropriate, but or maybe it's appropriate.
No, they do
I guess
not.
It depends if you're working on your buns and your guns. So I probably wouldn't do a lot of these where you're like squatting down and doing a bicep curl or something. I would probably, put those separate. So squat with the appropriate weight. But there's lots of example. One I might use is like a curl to press. So you're like, usually you're in like a split stance and you go like a bicep curl and then press the weight over your head. Now you could probably press more than you could bicep curl. It depends, I guess, on your guns. So in that case, that might be an exception where like I do something like that. So all that to say, you have to go, like that's the dilemma, is that you have to go with if you have to do both these exercises, you can only, in the bicep squat is a good example. You can probably squat tons more, but you're limited because you're supposed to do this bicep curl. So I just probably wouldn't do that very often, but it's okay to do things like that sometimes, maybe in a warm up or, as part of like a big routine you're doing, a cardio routine or something.
Well, and maybe in that case, this is a good chance to work on really good squat form, keeping your heels down, trying to get your butt lower than you can when you're holding a really heavy weight.
Sure, range of motion. And maybe you only have that lighter weight, so then the combinations make sense. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you see these in programs as like a third or fourth workout where it's sort of this like, as you say, more like a mobility, working on range of motion and just moving your joints. So I think they're fine. But you do at some point want to, like if you've been doing this for like weeks and weeks and weeks and you're not seeing progress, and your goal is to maybe increase your leg strength, then you're going to have to challenge your leg strength,
Right.
and do your bicep curls as accessories, right? And these accessories, like again, I wouldn't probably even do bicep curls most of the time, because we do rows and pull-ups and these things. But some people like working buns and guns, and so like the accessory workouts, which is like your beach workout, you're doing your pecs and your biceps, those can be between or at the end of a workout where you actually do a bit of that bodybuilding, like fatiguing to try and build your guns, or toning, whatever you want to call it. But I would do the priority lifts and then leave those accessories for between or after, so they don't get in the way.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying really hard to think of other body parts that you can rhyme, and I can't. It's been driving me crazy this last 2 minutes.
Chest and...
Nope, there's nothing. I don't know.
Legs.
We'll come back to it.
Legs and eggs.
I thought about that one.
Yeah.
But that's...
What's an egg?
Like, no, it's all like pelvic floor. Like ovaries.
I guess, because they do put squats like it's supposed to be helpful, as part of... Yeah, so there you go. You got a class.
I
you
got
can
a
go
new
lead
class.
a new... Yoga, like legs and eggs.
Everybody who comes to every Consummate Athlete class coming to our Friday morning
Working
yoga
your ovaries today
is going to be pleasantly surprised this Friday.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, next question. Strength training is taking a while.
Yeah, go faster.
Okay, done. Next question.
Well, I think sometimes you'll see it in routines, and this is, Dan John would say similar, like you sort of take the rest you need. So if it says like 2 minutes rest, like a lot of times you don't. Most cyclists don't need that much. They're very strong cardio. They're not lifting that much weight. You can just sort of go again when you need to go again, assuming you can hit it. The thing, again, at some point you'll get strong enough that you do need to recover more between these loads, but most of us aren't there. The other thing I see is that people... they're resting between and taking a long time between exercise. It's okay to move a little steadier, or the warm up and the cool down are this like massive thing.
Right.
If you're a cyclist, you probably don't need to ride your bike in the warm up unless that's part of it. Like some of my clients, I will do like, to try and get a bit more bike time in there perhaps, or it's the only time they can ride their bike is in the gym or something. But, you sort of get in there and start, do a couple lunges, do a couple, inchworms, whatever you're into for your warm up, maybe a tiny bit of skipping just to get like a little bit of cardio going, blood flowing. But, that warm up doesn't need to be very long again, because most of us aren't, deadlifting a car or something.
Right.
So just get into it and like warm up into the thing a little quicker. And then I think look at the routine, right? Sometimes we get into these routines off the internet and it's just, they might be too long. Like I do think there's like, what are the couple key things you're trying to do? There's only 6 things you probably need to do in a strength workout. So
yeah, I'd say for most of us, 45 minutes would probably be like the total time you would spend on most strength workouts. Like occasionally you might get one that takes a little longer.
And I get it. If I was going to a gym, I would spend an hour. But if you're into like an hour and a half and you're a cyclist, an endurance athlete, like that's probably too long. Like figure out something else.
Clearly the person asking this is complaining about it. So
yeah,
it's a problem that.
So you might just cut something out, and say you're cutting the core out or the accessory things. Maybe that's something you can do at home as a third workout. Later in the week, on the weekend, Saturday after your hard intervals, you do a bit of like core burner or something like that. I think that can work okay. But yeah, there's not a real reason. Certainly over an hour. Like it's just either you're like taking way too much time standing around between, which you don't need to do, and maybe you just thought you had to like rest for 30 seconds or a minute between everything.
Here's a question. At the gym, often you're like waiting for dude bro McDude bro to like finish on the squat rack.
Right.
Would you, if you had a set, would you change up the order versus waiting for dude bro McDude bro to like take off all his weights?
Yeah, probably. It's tricky at a gym, right? So that's where your routine probably reflects your environment a bit. A lot of the routines I build will be more home oriented. But yeah, you do need to be careful, because if you're at the squat rack, you can't be, gone for 10 minutes and then come back. If you're doing like a superset or a circuit, you're going to have to probably stick there, and maybe you can do like push-ups, between the squats or something like that. But you're going to have to do, so in that case, that's your main lift. And then maybe you'd go to like a circuit or some other stuff that's a bit more open, free weights, and mats or something. But yeah, that's a good question. And so sometimes that's the routine you're doing is like a home routine versus a gym routine.
Right. But like if I had squats, bench press, you know, lateral something. I don't know. Like if I had 5 exercises and someone is on the squat rack and you're like aware it's going to be like waiting, you know, 4 or 5 minutes for them to get done, would you just skip it and come back to it later?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you got to do something. So yeah, I would just change the order probably.
Yeah.
Again, most of us aren't throwing in a maximal you know, back squat or something like that.
Well, yeah, and I guess like the question is, can you sub in? Like it's frustrating to not get to use the equipment you want to use if you're in a gym, but yeah, could you just go over and goblet squat instead?
Exactly. Yeah, you do that or something like that, and it's just a little different, right? Which is, you know, you got to be careful with that, but that's just the reality, right? Like it's something that's better than nothing in most cases, unless you get injured. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Zwift low cadence random recommendation? Question mark.
Oh, that one's like really niche, but sometimes Zwift, if you're following a workout, apparently will like, if there wasn't a cadence suggested, sometimes it just decides that it's going to like throw out this really random, like low.
Oh, me and Zwift are best friends now.
Yeah. So it sort of gets this question, like how low is too low? If it's not suggested, or like what cadence should you do? And there's a big range there depending on the person and the body. But if you're doing endurance, like easy pace, generally you're not going to let your cadence go low. So like Molly will often ride at like 70, you know, maybe lower RPM.
Bring that down.
And I mean,
I think 63 is my sweet spot.
It's so low. So when people start cycling, often that's the case, that it's like around 70. You'll see that in studies sometimes as like an efficient cadence.
And then some of us just maintain that.
But the more, yeah. And so you have to be careful because like Molly also does fairly well. Usually, you know, if there's a lot of attacks in a group, I wouldn't expect you to do great. But most, you know, camps and stuff, it doesn't really matter that much for Molly and her goals. So you do want to look, because sometimes it's like, well, this person's doing something different than I would expect, but they're doing okay. So if they're doing okay, it's fine. But that said, generally over 80 RPM is a good rule of thumb. Like if you start seeing 70s and you're doing endurance, I would say try and, you know, shift easier, you know, pedal faster. But I guess this particular question is like, there's random things in Zwift sometimes, so just be careful.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say read the description of your workout if you're following a plan, not just, you know, blindly following the Zwift thing, as much as people want to turn brains off sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, reaching pull-up goals. So with Consummate Athlete, like we actually do have a set of strength standards that we now give Consummate Athlete clients, and one of which is towards the direction of being able to do pull-ups, which sounds like a silly thing for cyclists. However, we think it's a really important measure of strength for, you know, real life, and you know, it's usually a good measure, honestly, of, you know, body composition even. So for us, it's one of those things to work on.
Yeah, it ties in a lot. I think it ties in your ability to like develop tension, grip strength, shoulder mobility, right? So if you're looking at, you know, we're trying to screen you to say like, if you crash on your mountain bike, is this going to be like
catastrophic?
I mean, it's maybe not catastrophic, but if you blow a rotator cuff, you know, you're out for a while. So if you can get your arms over your head more often, this is good. So this is really the goal, is get your arms overhead, have grip strength so you can hold onto your bicycle. We know that grip strength is associated with overall body strength, longevity. So that's really the standards. It's not saying you're going to win the bike race because of the standards. We've talked about this before. The standards are really just like, are there gaps in your program or in your fitness, your health, your wellness that might feed back into cycling, but also just, you know, again, we want your shoulders to function as a human's shoulders probably should. So we're going to say, how do you get better at pull-ups? Say you do none. Is that the question, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a pull-up bar? This is the biggest screen why we do this, is like, is there anything to hang off in your house? Because if your environment isn't set up to hang, you don't even know, or the answer is no. Like there's just no way that you can roll, you know, 5 pull-ups if you've never done a pull-up, right? It's unlikely. Some people are, you know, just, you know, their bodies are such a way that it's fine. You know, you tend to be very good.
I was going to say, I am one of those.
Like off the couch, you probably do more pull-ups than I do.
Yeah, and that's just a weird freak genetic thing. That's not anything to do with...
Well, there's a bit of power to weight there, but there's also like, you know, you have muscle in your shoulders.
Yeah. And I have worked on it over the years, but like when I was 8, like the presidential physical fitness test, I don't know if anyone else remembers the horror of that. Like I would fake running the mile. I would never run the mile, but I could crush the pull-ups.
Right.
And that was on nothing. So it is a genetic thing, but it is also very trainable. So the pull-up bars, we have one that's like $25 on Amazon. It goes in the door frame. It does not wreck your door frame. And you can take it down.
We'll put this link in there. There's also stands now that are like $100 to $200. You know, if you have room, and then that opens up. They also give you like a dip machine, which could be nice. You know, another pressing option. And also, you know, I really like the dip thing. If you can picture dips where you're sort of like supporting yourself like a gymnast on parallel bars, I guess would be sort of what it is. It's actually really nice for the back. Like I find that actually like really nice. I'll get like a traction on my spine. I find that's really not every like different back pains have different, you know, things. Not that I have a ton of back pain, but I do find that that's very therapeutic. So I'll actually use the kitchen counter a lot of times just to like lift my feet off the ground and sort of press in. And so this is good too. So get the bars because this is going to let you hang.
And then I think B, hang.
Then we're going to hang. So then we want to see, can you increase your hanging time? Don't even worry about trying pull-ups and struggling. I think this is where one is building grip strength, building shoulder strength, bicep strength. The biceps are going to get stronger just from static hanging. We can add things like shrugs or some core work by doing like knee lifts while you're hanging there, but set some goals around hanging time. And I think that's really motivating because you're going to see that go up every time you do it. It'll be 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 45, 60, and you could go as far as you want. Go to 2 minutes even, say, right? I think after about a month of that, you know, you could start trying single pull-ups or something like I call them jumping pull-ups, but you have to be very careful if your shoulders are attached to an older body. Jumping up, that you're in control at the top. You don't want to just like jar as you're jumping into a pull-up, but you can use like a box to step up so your chin's above the bar and then slowly lower yourself down for 5 and really counting it out, 5 honest seconds, even longer on the way down. Again, you're just hanging, but now you're getting used to eccentrically. This is eccentric, so lengthening the muscle while you're working.
Now, CrossFit's very big on the bands. So where do you come in on that?
I think you can be careful with those, and I think they're fine. They're a great tool to start to build up. I wouldn't do them as your only pull-up. So maybe you have 3 workouts in the week, or maybe you're doing a little bit every day, which is a great way to just work on the skill over time. I would do it maybe 1 or 2 of the days, and then maybe you're doing the slow lower one day, and then maybe some hanging the other day, and mixing it up just so the load's a bit different in there. The bands, you got to be careful because even in the gym with the squat racks, I've seen people like flip themselves right off the bar. Like keep your hands attached to the bar at all times. Do not let go. And then especially with the doorway pull-up bars, that gets dicey because the doorway pull-up bar can, if you get pressure going the wrong way, that it comes off the door frame, right? It's a hook. It's very cool how it works. But if the band pulls you the wrong way against gravity, then you could find yourself on the ground.
And I would say, like, I'm personally not a big fan of the bands, only because I like the just ultimate simplicity of just the doorway pull-up bar. I think it's really good, even for the jumping. Like, doorways are low. Like, I can hold the bar and touch the ground, so it doesn't take much.
So you can tow yourself through the sticking point. And so that's the next thing is like maybe you help yourself a little bit on the way up with a band or with a toe up, or you could be a partner or a step or something that's just you're towing yourself through the like first quarter. And then the next ones maybe you can pull yourself into, and then you can get a set of 5 or a set of 3.
What's your underhand overhand take?
So our standards are for women can be whatever you want. So there's actually neutral as well, which I actually prefer that. I call it hammer grip, but the neutral. So there's on the doorway pull-up bars, and a lot of the ones in the gym will have like a neutral grip. So it's like coming out, like poking you in the eye, basically.
I've always wondered what they were.
And so that I really like. But you can do chin up, which is palms facing you, facing your face, or palms out, which I would call more of a pull-up. And that's palms out. So that would be for men, we say 5 of those, and then women is whatever you want to get 5 is the target we set. Again, could you be stronger? For sure you could. But that usually a lot of women, once they can access that bicep a bit more, it's actually like they can usually get a couple or sometimes, it's closer to get a couple.
And I think the reason we have these standards, just to like kind of explain that is it's not necessarily that you're going to get every single standard, but it does give you something to work towards.
And there's going to be obviously genetic, like I have a bunch of clients that can squat and hold a squat. They're like, how long? You want this for like 20 minutes? It's like, yeah, I spent a lot of time in India in my youth, and or my legs are just like a certain proportion that I'm built to squat and I have ankle mobility, right? Like I've preserved this my whole life. So kudos, maintain that. But there's going to be probably a few other things that are trickier.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of the standards that are not easy for me. It's not like...
Yeah, for sure. So, and then from there with pull-ups, I would say once you start being able to do some reps, a lot of times, these strength workouts are 3 sets of 8. Unfortunately, pull-ups are like a max effort. So when you think about how much weight you're lifting, it's probably more than any other exercise you're doing. Like no one at home is generally doing, not no one, but most people that we work with, they have a 20-pound dumbbell and they're squatting it with their powerful legs. But then you go to do a pull-up and it's insert your body weight, less
For your
less
arms,
less.
yeah.
I guess you're not lifting your hands, but you can subtract that. But think about that, right? Your arms versus your legs, and what are you asking?
Minus your hands.
So like think about it as like this is your max. You see the people on the internet. I talked about this guy that I know who was 40 and he's like got these tons of weight he's deadlifting. That's sort of what you're doing with your pull-ups. So you have to change your rep scheme a little bit to 3 sets of 3, 5 sets of 2, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And good. That's what we want is heavy maximal pulls. So you're going to have to just come to terms that that's great. And that's the goal. Mm-hmm. And we're aiming for 5 in the standard, but the workout could be 5 sets of 2, 3 sets of 3. this is...
And there's always stuff you can tweak on them. Like for me, I'm forever trying to make sure that I get like all the way down, like instead of coming like 2/3 or 3/4 of the way down.
There's infinite and then you can start adding weight. So I now wear like my 10-pound weight vest to get my 3 sets of 3. I do the odd time where I'll use a band to try and get like a set of 10 or something like that out of it. There's lots of ways to play with it, right? And I think that to your point, you just go way slower on the up and the down. And pause, hang for 10 seconds. Dan John has this one thing that's like 30. So you do one, hang for 30 seconds, do one, hang for 30 seconds. So 2 minutes total. I think it would be 5.
Oof.
5 pull-ups. It's only 5, but it takes you 2 minutes. And it is it is a brute. Yeah.
I was so mad at you the other day, by the way. You were on the trainer and you've set up the trainer so it's like directly looking at where we have the pull-up bar. And like I did beautiful pull-ups and I was like so stoked for myself, and you were on the trainer at the time, but you were like in the middle of an interval. So I don't think you even like registered that I was there doing them. But I was like, as I was doing them, I was like, he's totally watching. This is amazing. I'm just like crushing this.
I try and not comment on women's fitness and the things that they're doing when they're doing them. Yeah, unless asked for my opinion, I hold it to myself.
Didn't even notice your wife just...
I noticed. I just don't try and not notice things because I wasn't asked to notice them. So there you go. So pull-ups. So hopefully that's helpful. Through the scale, play with them. But I think the biggest thing is just like, can you hang in your home?
Right.
And I think for health, this is a big deal. This is something that, shoulder mobility, the traction on the low back, it's just a great thing to keep in the arsenal. So it's setting up your environment. This is a perfect environment.
Such a cheap, like easy thing to add.
Well, and you can make it expensive or cheap, however you want to do it.
Oh, actually, on the note of the back thing, like I think I've even said on the podcast, I was having like a really bad neck thing for a couple weeks. I'm getting old. I woke up wrong. For like 2 weeks, my neck was just bothering me. And it like, I let it go for a few days, assuming it was just going to kind of heal on its own. And it didn't seem to be. And honestly, hanging is, I think, what actually ended up helping it. Like I started doing.
See that sometimes you'll get like a pop, and it is it's great. There's nothing bad about a pull-up bar.
Yeah, so good.
I guess
so
unless you've been told to be careful overhead because you've now had something to your shoulders. But there you go.
Okay, I think probably we'll say this is our maybe last one. Do you want to talk about the question about snowshoeing? I think we are now right in the perfect season for that.
So we love cross-training. Consummate Athlete, the logo's here. You're watching on YouTube.
I think maybe 2 months ago had an episode all about cross-training.
We have a t-shirt. Cross-training is not a crime. You can check it out in the Consummate Athlete store. Several other great t-shirts there too. So cross-training, the question comes, you have your cycling training plan you're following. And so on Sunday, you have your 3-hour long ride. You might do this on the trainer or a fat bike or outside with your fenders, however you do it. But you're like, okay, now the conditions are great for snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, running if you're a runner. What else do people do for cross-training?
You just put me on the spot. Paddleboarding, rowing.
Right. So first,
hiking.
What I say is wear your heart rate strap. If you have to bring your bike computer in your pocket or your pack, that's a great idea, just so you can record this because it's still your training. And what we want to see is that heart rate and the feeling. Feeling has to play into this a little bit sometimes too. Is it about what we would expect? Zone 1, zone 2. It doesn't have to be like top of zone 2. Is it cardiovascular exercise? When we're strictly talking about cross training, like as an endurance athlete, is the cardiovascular demand there? If you're playing hockey, it's going to look like max effort and then nothing. max effort, and then nothing. So often hockey is not a great replacement for, your 3-hour long ride, but snowshoeing for 3 hours, assuming you're conditioned, assuming blah, 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 like ease into stuff. Your heart rate's probably going to be a little lower in snowshoeing for this particular example, but it is a steady cardiovascular, fairly good muscle activation, similar. I think it's a great sport. You'd see it's like, again, it's lower heart rate, but like steady heart rate across hours.
I do want to point out, if you're doing a 3-hour hockey game, you probably shouldn't also then go right into a 3-hour endurance ride. We should probably modify your training slightly. So that was not to say definitely do your hockey all out.
Usually
still.
That's it. Yeah, it's not a replacement. Usually we'll put hockey in the schedule for clients, and whether we actually like quote unquote count it, but it is there and you have to account for it because it is, it is a load. It's more like an interval load for most people. Again, if you don't believe me, if you just play shinny for an hour, maybe it is actually okay and can go into that bucket of cross training in the general preparation period.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Wearing the heart rate strap for it and.
Yeah, and so skiing cross-country skiing, Nordic skiing, skate, and classic are generally going to be pretty good. You have to be sometimes careful with the intensity on that one just because it is full body, and a lot of us suck at cross-country skiing, which is a good thing, but sometimes the load can get high there, so you just have to be careful. It might look more like a tempo workout, and again, you might sub that into your plan while the skiing's good, and I think that's beautiful. It's great.
Flip side, downhill skiing, similar to hockey. Like, again, it's going to take time, effort, energy. So like you shouldn't necessarily do it on top of your full training schedule. So just that, like, no, it's not a swap, but yes, it should be considered within your training plan.
I think so. Yeah. And so that's it. Like, I think go and wear your heart rate strap and you would probably see similar. If you're a hard charging downhill skier, like the heart rate activation may be significant, but it's going to be for whatever the length of a run is or the hectic part that you're really pushing it. And then you're sitting, like you're obviously sitting for a long chunk. So there's different ways to account it, but yeah, it's probably not one that's going to be a direct trade. It's just going to be, unfortunately, it's not. But like, I think if you love skiing, downhill skiing, you should downhill ski and then figure out the plan from there. And this, again, gets into our goal setting episode where maybe if you love downhill skiing, just don't put your races in March, April. Let yourself have a transition back out onto the bike and give yourself some time to get ready for a June, July event. And then it all fits, right? It's beautiful and you can still do the things you like and feel fulfilled and all this stuff, right? Yeah. Don't fight it, right? Like, I think you've figured out how to be active in the winter, go with that, whatever that looks like to be outside. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, well, you know what? I think we are going to wrap up there. As usual, hit us up over at Consummate Athlete on Instagram, consummateathlete.com for show notes and leave us any messages or any questions you want answered. Excited for, what's coming here in the new year. And if you want to start the new year on a good foot, do us a favor, rate, review, subscribe. It would mean so much to us. We really appreciate it. All right, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.